Good morning, everybody. I just been having a lot of fun today working on a song and just really reveling in the scriptures that I was reading for today. If any of you are familiar with the lectionary, the calendar of readings for the year, one of them today comes from Ezekiel 34, and this is a passage that I think for a couple of years has just been ringing in my ears. And actually, earlier this year, I had written a song, half of a song, based on Ezekiel 34. And this morning, I finished that song, and I paired it with another passage, a companion passage in Isaiah 58. So you can hear that a little bit later. It's I don't know, it's kind of like an 80s rock song in some ways, but it sort of captures for me the spirit of Ezekiel 34, where God is just sort of he is put off with the leaders of Israel, and he is done with them. And it's kind of like he's putting his foot down, and he's saying, no more. Like, I'm done with you. So I'll read portions of it. You can read more of it on your own, but Ezekiel 34, 1-4, to start with. And it says, "The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, prophesy against the shepherds of Israel. Prophesy and say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Woe to the shepherds of Israel who only take care of themselves. Should not the shepherds take care of the flock? You eat the curds, clothe yourselves with the wool, and slaughter the choice animals, but you do not take care of the flock. You have not strengthened the weak, or healed the sick, or bound up the injured. You have not brought back the strays, or searched for the lost. You have ruled them harshly and brutally." If you think ahead to the New Testament, many of these same images are images that Jesus picks up on as the Good Shepherd in John, for instance, when he is the one who seeks after and saves the lost. It's the lost sheep. It's the image of Jesus being the opposite of who the shepherds of Israel were, the evil kings, even the false prophets who were leading the people astray, who were working for profit instead of for the benefit of the people. And God judged them for it because they only took care of themselves. They were in positions of power, and instead of using that position to bless, to enrich, and to build up, the leaders were using it to benefit themselves. And God said, no more. So verse 17, I'm going to skip around, but go back and read it. This is good stuff. Verse 17. Then God speaks to the flock now, the abused flock. "As for you, my flock, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I will judge between one sheep and another, and between rams and goats. Is it not enough for you," now he's talking, I think, to the rams, "is it not enough for you to feed on the good pasture? Must you also trample the rest of the pasture with your feet? Is it not enough for you to drink clear water? Must you also muddy the rest of the water with your feet? Must my flock feed on what you've trampled and drink what you have muddied with your feet? Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says to them. See, I myself will judge between the fat sheep and the lean sheep, because you shove with flank and shoulder, butting all the weak sheep with your horns, until you have driven them away. I will save my flock, and they will no longer be plundered. I will judge between one sheep and another. I will place over them one shepherd, my servant David, and he will tend them. He will tend them and be their shepherd. I, the Lord, will be their God, and my servant David will be prince among them. I, the Lord, have spoken. I will make a covenant of peace with them and rid the land of wild beasts so that they may live in the desert and sleep in the forests in safety. I will bless them and the places surrounding my hill. I will send down showers in season. There will be showers of blessing. The trees of the field will yield their fruit, and the ground will yield its crops. The people will be secure in their land. They will know that I am the Lord when I break the bar of their yoke and rescue them from the hands of those who have enslaved them. These are incredible words. I mean, they're terrifying words if you're on the wrong side of it, but what words of hope? If you are the one that is the thin sheep that's constantly beat down, the weak one that's butted out of the way, that's shoved into, when the ones who have the power continue to use their power to push, to shove, to not only take what they have, their own clean waters, but then to mess your clean waters up so that they're in their greed, they're going after more. We're seeing this all over the place. This is our world. And there is an indictment, I think, in all of Scripture, and the church needs to hear it today. There is an indictment on those who lead out of a place of greed, out of a place to serve themselves, out of a place to stroke their egos, out of a place to get wealthy off of the ministry of the gospel. And it's happening everywhere. And God is saying, he has always actually said, enough of this. Reminds me back in Isaiah 58. So Ezekiel 34 is directed to the leaders, but Isaiah 58 is actually directed to the entire house of Israel, all of the people. And it's basically the people are like, God, don't you hear us? We are crying to you for rescue and help. Where are you? We're fasting. We're doing all the things that you want. And God's like, no, you're not. He says, you hear the conversation start in Isaiah 58:3. When the people cry, why have we fasted, they say, and you've not seen it? Why have we humbled ourselves, and you've not noticed? Like, we're doing all the things, we're completing all the rituals, like, what is it? What do you want from us? But God responds, yet on the day of your fasting, you do as you please. You're rebellious. You exploit all your workers. Your fasting ends in quarreling and strife, and in striking each other with wicked fists. You cannot fast as you do today and expect your voice to be heard on high. Is that the kind of fast I have chosen? Only a day for someone to humble themselves? Is it only for bowing one's head like a reed or for lying on sackcloth and ashes? Is that what you call a fast? A day acceptable to the Lord? Right? I mean, there is like all kinds of stuff here just in their attitude towards one another. They might be doing the things that are written in Torah that they're supposed to do, but they're not doing the other things. They're not living at peace with one another. They're letting their greed and their hunger for power and for self-service to motivate them, which is why they're exploiting their workers, trying to squeeze as much as they can out of people, not treating people fairly, where they're fighting and grabbing after things. Reminds me of the book of James. And so God repeats to them, or he says to them in correction, is not this the kind of fasting that I have chosen? To loose the chains of injustice and untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free and break every yoke? Is it not to share your food with the hungry and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter? I mean, this is straight out of Torah, straight out of all of the prophets, to care for the widow, the orphan, the stranger in your midst. Do those things. Is it not to share your food with the hungry, to provide the poor wanderer with shelter? When you see the naked, to clothe him, and not to turn away from your own flesh and blood? If you do those things, that's the real fast. That's the real worship. When you see people in need and your heart breaks for them and you do something about it, and when you see injustice and you don't let it stand, when you see lies and manipulation and you call them out no matter the cost to yourself, when you make choices that don't just benefit you but are for the good of all, that is fasting. And when you do that, God says, then your light will break forth like the dawn. This is written to people who are experiencing exile, right? So their world is kind of crushed. When you do these things, then your light will break forth like the dawn, and your healing will quickly appear. Then your righteousness will go before you. I've lost my place, of course. Then your light will break forth like the dawn, and your healing will quickly appear. Then your righteousness will go before you, and the glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. Then you will call, and the Lord will answer. You will cry for help, and he will say, here am I. You want me to answer you? Then get about my business. Do the things that I've said to do, and I will be there to fight for you as a warrior. If you do away with the yoke of oppression, with the pointing finger and malicious talk, if you spend, I love this line, if you spend yourselves on behalf of the hungry and satisfy the needs of the oppressed, man, when we wear ourselves out doing the good work of the Lord, then your light will rise in the darkness and your night will become like the noonday. Then the Lord will guide you always. He will satisfy your needs in a sun-scorched land and will strengthen your frame. You will be like a well-watered garden, like a spring whose waters never fail. Your people will rebuild the ancient ruins and will raise up the age-old foundations. You will be called repairer of broken walls, restorer of streets with dwellings. When we do the things that God tells us to do, not only do we receive his light and his healing, not only does his goodness shine over us, break forth over us, but then it starts to get inside of us too, and we are a well-watered spring, right? In Ezekiel 34, it was showers of blessing will come down on us, and then what happens is those showers of blessing spring up out of us to nourish the land around us. All of this in Ezekiel and in Isaiah, these are things that get picked up on in the New Testament. In the book of Revelation, I mean, this language is everywhere. Jesus is referring to this language all the time. And one key place where Jesus picks up on the language, both of Ezekiel and of Ezekiel 34 and of Isaiah 58, is in Matthew 25, where Jesus tells the parable of the king separating out the sheep and the goats, and the big question comes, when is it that the sheep and how is it that the sheep and the goats are separated? What is the measure of judgment? And it says, when the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit on his throne in heavenly glory. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats, just like in Ezekiel 34. He will put the sheep on his right, the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. Actually, this stuff is like drawn straight out of Isaiah 58. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you? And the king will reply, I tell you the truth, whatever you did for the least one of these brothers of mine, you did it for me. And then the flip is true for the goats, that those who did not care for the least of these then had to stand up and face the judgment of God. This, I called it a parable, but it's not even a parable. It's just imagery. It's like stark imagery where Jesus is telling people, get this together. And I think it is an indictment on the leaders of Israel, even here in this point, but for the people themselves. Know today what it is that God will judge you on. Is there a heart, a true and restored, sanctified is a word we often use, heart of love and mercy and generosity and kindness inside of you, so that you have been so remade that when you see those who are suffering and hurting, when you have opportunity even to benefit yourself, you choose instead to benefit others, and that love, that heart of God pours out of you. It is the measure by which our faith, our religiosity will be judged. Do we have true fasting or false? Are we going to be those who care for ourselves or others? And those of us who are in positions of leadership, we really got to get this. This is a measure for all. But in this way, I do think that we are judged more harshly as leaders when we use our power to abuse instead of to heal, to empower, to lead forward as a shepherd, as a gentle shepherd who gives their lives for the sheep, as Jesus does. I wrote a song, like I said, it's kind of edgy. In fact, one line in here which for someone coming from my background is a little edgy. For many others, it's not. But I asked the question in this narrative of sorts through this song, isn't it enough? God speaking to the leaders, to the unrighteous, isn't it enough? Why are you so greedy? Isn't it enough? And then I just felt like the anger of God rising, actually. So that's why I wrote it this way. But why the hell are you so greedy? Just like fed up. God is fed up with this attitude. So why the hell are you so greedy? What's your problem? And then the narrative continues using language from Ezekiel 34. You muddy the waters with your dirty feet. You trample the pastures. All the good things that I have meant for everyone, you are squandering it by trying to be greedy about it. And then there is a word to the weak ones. Hear me now, you weak ones. I will save you. I'll make a covenant of peace. I'll give you a new shepherd who will be worthy of that title because he will shepherd you in love. Obviously, looking forward to Jesus, but also it's a reflection of who we are supposed to be. One who tends in justice, who gives his life for you. And then the question goes, the song moves forward, and now it's the people who are the weak ones, who have been abused, who are crying out to God. Isn't it enough, right? Haven't we suffered enough under unjust rulers? And then they're saying, why are they so greedy? What's their problem? Isn't it enough? Why the hell are they so greedy? You just feel it. And what's God's response here? He tells them, all right, you people, you weak ones, make sure that your heart is right. And this is where it switches to Isaiah 58. Loose the chains of injustice. Shatter every yoke, and your healing will quickly appear. And then on, you'll be called repairers of broken walls, restorers of the streets with dwellings. I will guide you, I will guard you, I will raise you up. And then the line returns once more. Okay, God, isn't it enough? We're doing it, God. We're trying our best. Please help us, deliver us. Crying out to our Lord for deliverance. And his response is, surely it is now enough. I will rid the land of beasts. Again, Ezekiel 34 language. Surely it is now enough. I am the judge and you are free. Clearly around us, we are dealing with beasts who have snuck in, who are trying to ravage and tear people apart. But our God is saying to us, you run to me, you throw off the yoke of slavery to sin, slavery to a desire inside to oppress, to steal, to grab. You throw that off, and I'm going to show you the springs of life. And do it even in the midst of injustice. Do it when it's not convenient. And let me tell you, it will be enough. The time will end. I will throw off the oppressive rulers, and I will give you light and life and glory. And I will restore all the things that are broken. Hear that word today. I need to hear it. You probably need to hear it. And may the Lord do his work in us. So much love today, friends.